What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS Wise stream at CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I, of course, am from the WiseTake Nation, which you can find on all the social media platforms listed above or directly at WiseTake.com if you are ready to book your ticket to Screenshot City. I am joined once again by the GOAT, the true OG that you know is Paulie D. You can find him on Twitter at Paulie with 8 D's. Paulie, what's happening, bro?
What up, baby?
More the same, man. More the same. Yesterday wasn't the greatest in NBA. Baseball, I pretty much broke even. Basketball, I think I lost about half the money I risked. So I'm looking to improve. This is 2 playoff slates in a row where it didn't go the way I wanted it to. What about you?
Yeah, I did not do very well in basketball yesterday. I did kind of recoup some of it on the showdown slate. And it was weird because we got a lot right, but again, it's the combinations that, because I looking at the lineup that won last night, and we, covered almost all those people. It's just a matter of pairing them right. I will say I've noticed that 5 guys from one team was in the winning lineup yesterday, and then 4 from the same team the first day, and actually 6 from that same game, that Houston-Denver game. It did go to overtime, so that could be an anomaly. Not Houston-Denver, Utah-Denver. But, on 4-game slates, you want to be looking for those, stacks and correlations more so than ever, because, one game can exceed the others. One team could have, a guy get thrown out, like Dallas when Porzingis got ejected, and now all these underpriced guys are going to get it, boosting usage and run. So I think you really want to focus on, game stacks and stacking individual teams that, are underpriced. Like yesterday, 5 Orlando guys, that's what took down the big donkey yesterday. So focus on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in trying to recognize if there's a specific team that seems underpriced or a team that just seems like they're in a really good spot. Another example of that is I think a team like the Celtics, they didn't all do well the last time they played, but I think Tatum and Jaylen Brown both really did well. And it comes down to pricing. Had the guys been a little bit like on FanDuel, there was probably more guys that did well. Gordon Hayward's in that mix because he was a lot cheaper over there. Not that he did bad; he did fine on DraftKings. He was just a little bit more expensive. But to your point, it is all about pricing, and obviously there's some luck that ties into it, or if a game goes to OT like the Utah game. But in the case of Orlando, there was just a lot of underpriced plays. Markelle Fultz, DJ Augustine. Fournier was underpriced even though he shit the bed. But who else was it? James Ennis was obviously underpriced with no Aaron Gordon. So there's definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. Charles Pritt, shout out to you in the chat, who's giving Paulie D a shout out. It's a nice call with Whiteside, had a pretty good game at his price. Yeah, he could have done even better had he not gotten into foul trouble in the first half.
It's all second half,
Yep. Yeah, we had 3 fouls in the first half. They pulled him. They had to. Wenyen Gabriel, let's see, solo D's. I like that. How did Wayne Gabriel do? Pretty much as expected, right? Came in, almost immediately fouled out. Was in sprinkles, right? Which is why we said Whiteside would be on the court with, it's going to have to do that with the white dude out, who I always call Myers Leonard, but his name is really Zach Collins, right? How about that? Yeah, remember from yesterday. But we'll go ahead and get jumping. The games are in a little bit of a different order. At least this first one is. So we'll get into the game by game. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll be covering baseball at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we had our PGA stream last night with Shockey and Brewmedic, so make sure you check that out. That's good until Thursday morning. With that said, let's go ahead and dive in. We've got Toronto in the Brooklyn Nets, 225.5 total, down from 226.5. The Toronto once again 11.5 point favorites. They've been like they were the one favorite who kind of won handily so far in this series. We'll start with the Brooklyn side. What do you got, Paulie?
So, Toronto really shot the fucking lights out in game 1. I mean, they are the superior team for sure. But I think this Brooklyn team is gritty, and I think that they'll keep the game closer longer, maybe not all the way down to the wire, but I think this will be closer. I don't think Fred VanVleet's going to shoot like 8 of 10 from 3. Um, I anticipate a closer game. Brooklyn has really narrowed its usage down to and minutes down to basically five guys, and that's LeVert, Harris, Temple, Jared Allen, and TLC. Those are the guys that I'll get exposure to. With only five guys getting the bulk of the minutes, they outside of Jared Allen, and even he could smash that price. We've seen him do it. They all have decent upside. I think if you're going this route, it's second highest total on the board. You want to pop a couple of these nets into your lineup. Obviously, Karis LeVert's the stud, the favorite, the high usage guy. But Joe Harris is, if we were talking cash games, he'd be like a cash game lock on this slate. He's, going to project for almost 6x on just a stock projection. Garrett Temple, another kind of cashy game kind of guy, not really high ceiling, but consistent, ton of minutes and contributes across all the stat lines. TLC's been awesome. He's probably shooting above his head, and I wouldn't be shocked to see like a letdown game, but he is getting a ton of minutes and playing well. And I don't mind Jared Allen, but that's a deep position. He'll be the one I have the least of here. Not all right, not that into this game, but I will have some, just in case.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Brooklyn played their guys a bunch of minutes. We don't usually see Brooklyn do that, and it's because they're missing other guys, right? It's not just Kyrie and Kevin Durant. They're missing Taurean Prince. They're missing DeAndre Jordan, guys that would make sure that the rest of the starters couldn't get 30 minutes or more. They don't have that ability right now. On top of that, I think one player to keep an eye on is Kuroix. Not that I think he's good or a great play, but he fouled out in about 16 minutes. So that really made them even more thin and really led them to playing TLC more, Garrett Temple more, even Joe Harris. I think like all those guys picked up an extra couple minutes, I think, to kind of cover that. So it's kind of, I don't see why that would be too much different today. I don't think Kuroix is a great defender, and he's matched up against Siakam when they're initially starting. So it really is a tough spot for him. I think it does make more sense to have somebody a little bit more athletic or agile at the very least to cover a guy like that. But should Kuroix not get into foul trouble, that could affect some of the minutes for a TLC or a Temple, whichever one that they feel is not playing well. I do think Joe Harris, like you said, is the guy of those three that they want to keep in there. He's the most reliable shooter of the three, the most active. He's been on this team. He knows the offense. And then after that, it's LeVert and Allen. And I agree with you that Allen is at a position where we got some super high upside players like Embiid and Jokic in really good spots. Want to get some of him, but again, can't go too crazy. It's just too good of a position. LeVert's the one with the massive usage. The price is up. There's still some ceiling there, but it's going to require Brooklyn to hang around this game this time around. And I agree with you. Toronto was like hyper efficient. They haven't really had to play as hard as Brooklyn has, on and off. But Brooklyn did like even in their last couple of games, me and you were scratching our head of why they didn't play their starters the game before, and then playing for nothing, and they decided to play everybody against the Clippers maximum minutes. So, been a little hard to project, but I'm with you. It's not my favorite game, but I don't want to ignore it either, because I agree with you that I think the only reason Toronto, who is a superior team, won that handily is because they were just really, really efficient from the field. With that said, what about the Toronto side?
Yeah, a lot to like here. Most of their guys are underpriced. Love Siakam. He kind of had a shitty game in game one, and they didn't really need him to close out that game. Still got you to like 35 or 37, whatever he ended up with. But, bigs against Brooklyn is just DFS religion at this point, and I think he's the best player on this team and has the most upside. I think today is like a premier spot for it to go off, especially if the game does stay close. I really like Kyle Lowry. I think Fred VanVleet had that huge shooting game, and then they didn't really need him to do anything. Again, because I think it's closer, I think, he'll, have the ball in his hand a bit more at the end, won't be deferring as much, and will close out the game. And I just think where people are going to run to go back to Fred VanVleet because he's $400 cheaper, I strongly prefer Kyle Lowry today. And then you got a handful of value plays. Norm Powell, Serge Ibaka, not exactly value, but 5.7, and I think slightly cheaper on FanDuel. Marc Gasol at 4K, never a sexy name, but he's another big against Brooklyn, and should be easily able to get 5x, and I think 6.5 is possible, especially if the game's close. OG's my favorite value play. He's 4,400, going to start, super athletic, rebounds, steals, blocks, all that good shit. We've seen him go for 50s a few times this year. And again, the closer the game is, the more likely I think he kind of ceilings out. But, Brooklyn doesn't defend. They don't get rebounds well. They turn the ball over. There's just a lot of upside in all the Toronto guys. Siakam and Lowry, I'll have the most of.
Yeah, I saw the same thing. I was thinking the same thing with Lowry. I was really big on Van Fleet in the first game, and it worked out for me. But now that the price is elevated to a point where he's almost as expensive as Lowry, I think it's a good point that you mentioned that Van Vliet was 8 for 10 from the 3-point line. He was just really efficient. He took 15 shots. Kyle Lowry took 14 shots. The difference is he was 3 for 14 and 3 of 10 from 3. But he also had 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Had this game been, and he played 38 minutes. Had he played more efficiently, maybe he would have been more aggressive. But he was fairly close to a triple-double, at least within the realm of this game being super competitive, of him having to push it. It's not like that far-fetched. Either way, if he just does what he did last time and just actually makes a couple more shots, then he's in a pretty good situation. So I'm with you on that with Lowry at this point because the price has gotten so close. I do prefer Lowry to Van Vliet. I'm fine with taking some shots on Siakam. He got in a little bit of foul trouble himself. He played less minutes, like by far, of the traditional starters on this team, and I don't expect that to be the case going forward with the playoffs. I think had he not gotten into a little bit of foul trouble early on, I think he would have been out there for a lot longer, and he probably would have performed a lot better. So we know his usage is big on DraftKings. He does feel underpriced at 7,500. Ibaka just always smashes Brooklyn. It doesn't matter how many minutes he gets. He just always just destroys Brooklyn. Just to even share some of what he's done against Brooklyn. He's seen Brooklyn 6 times this year. 6 times. His first one was on October 18th. In 19 minutes, he went for 35 DraftKings points. In 21 minutes, he went for 37. In 28 minutes, went for 40. His one bad game, he played 32, went for 25. 35 minutes against Brooklyn, went for 46. 26 in the most recent game, went for 37. So there's he's literally had one bad game against Brooklyn out of 6. It just seems like in this series you're going to play him more often than not. So I'm fine with getting a healthy exposure to Serge once again. I wish I would have had more in the first game. I'm with you on OG. I feel a little bit more comfortable in a situation against a bad rebounding team when looking at a player like OG. And then, like you said, Marc Gasol for value. At 4K on DraftKings, he just doesn't have to do a lot. He only got 21 minutes, and we don't know if he would have gotten more if this game was a little bit more competitive from start to finish. So he's another one that's done. Like you said, any center is going to do dirties to Brooklyn. That's just what happens. It's just the rule. With that said, let's keep it rolling. We got the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. We've got a 216.5 total, down 2 points from 218.5. The Nuggets opened up -4. Currently still at -4. We're going to talk about the Utah side first. Paulie, in game 1, you nailed Donovan Mitchell. He was underpriced, went out there, I think he went like 10x or 9x, whatever it was. Just smashed Singleton. They had no answer for him. What are you doing with Mitchell and company today?
So I do like Mitchell. The price is elevated. I think, he wasn't that popular then, and I think he remains unpopular at the increased price. Obviously, that 10x was boosted by overtime, but even without overtime, he was going for 8x. And he has the second highest usage through one game of, everyone that's played thus far. And, I know it's a one-game sample, but the playoffs are fairly consistent. And there's who else is going to do it? That this is what their team is. Maybe when Conley comes back, it changes a little bit, but he's the scorer. He's the shooter. They got Clarkson coming off the bench to be that role. And, Ingles, O'Neal, Gobert, Juwan Morgan, Niang, these are all role players to set picks and, move the defense around and, get him shots is just this is like a one stud team right now, which is, similar to like Harden without Westbrook in Houston. It's, he's probably underpriced for what his usage is. The problem is like I don't think he's got a ton of ceiling unless we catch that overtime thing, and in that case, you're gonna want it correlated with other players on his team. And Denver at 9-2, like I'll have maybe 20% because I just like other players a little bit better. And I think without overtime, this is going to be one of the lower scoring games on the slate. And there's a possibility that Denver makes an adjustment, double teams him and forces these other guys to beat him. I mean, if I was them, that's what I would do because, he had a phenomenal game. He was just in the zone. You take him away, the rest of these guys just really aren't that intimidating. So, I anticipate, a game not going overtime, the price being increased, so the ceiling's not as attractive, and Denver making adjustments to try to limit, his damage. So I'm not that into it, but as a whole, he's probably slightly underpriced for what his usage is and going to get the opportunity to at least 5X. I just, now at 9-2, you got to get a 60, which, he needed like the game of his life to get to. So I just don't think there's a ton of profit in his price. But he's fine. I'll definitely have some. As for the rest of Utah, I really like Royce O'Neal again. He got into foul trouble last game. He isn't a high usage player. So, like, in reviewing, I guess that was Monday's slate, like, we probably shouldn't have gone so high on a low usage guy. I mean, yeah, it looked attractive, yada, yada. But, a lot of things have to go right for him to really smash that price. Otherwise, there's probably other plays in the slate that have more ceiling, and I think he's a good value play. We're kind of value starved, so I'll have some, but probably not more than 30% because of the low usage. I think Joe Ingles is fine. I'll have a little bit of Juwan Morgan, just because he's like 3,200 and going to get 20 some odd minutes. George Niang's almost the identical play, so I'll have some of them. Not too into Gobert, not too into the Jazz as a whole, except for Jordan Clarkson and Royce O'Neal.
Yeah, I think you hit Mitchell on the head. At least for DraftKings at 9-2, I just think that he's got a 60-point ceiling and he should be played some if you have multiple teams, but I don't think it's as much of a priority because the price is elevated now to a point where there's not as much upside on the price itself. And granted, the 81 he put up did take overtime for him to get there. With that said, this game they've gone to overtime 2 times in a row. So maybe they're just that damn good of a matchup for each other. Rudy Gobert, his price has come down, so he's going to project well. I still don't feel too comfortable with it. I mean, even in overtime, he still couldn't break 40 DraftKings points. So I'm with Paulie. I'll have a little bit because of his price, but that's about it. I'm really, once again, going to be on Clarkson. I think he could have done a little bit more than what we even saw, but I still think he's too cheap for the upside. No Conley. They're clearly relying on him. And if Donovan Mitchell does not perform as efficiently as he did in the last game, then I do think Clarkson's going to have to be the one, and as well as Joe Ingles, to kind of step up and do a little bit more. I'm with you on Royce O'Neal. I still think the foul trouble kind of hurt us a little bit. I think it prevented him from being as aggressive. He did play the minutes. He just wasn't as aggressive. But at the end of the day, like Paulie said, he's a low usage player. So hindsight, to go heavy on a value play that was going to be popular that had such low usage didn't seem to make sense. But I'm still going to be somewhat aggressive with him because if you look at what he's done in the bubble, since the restart without Bojan and some of these guys, he has been a little more aggressive. He had like a usage rate of 8 in that last game. If you look at the bubble, it's mostly between 15 to 17. So it's not that fucking terrible as we saw in that last game. So I will go back to Royce. Just going to hope he stays out of foul trouble. And I won't be as heavy just because he is a low usage player. That's pretty much it. So, not a ton on the Utah side. Interesting when we talk about Denver here because I know that Michael Porter Jr. was on pace to have a good game, but at the end of the day, they were just matching up Mitchell with him. They were setting screens to get Mitchell on him, and they were just exposing him, just destroying him to a point where he had to get removed from the game in the fourth quarter. And in a game where Torrey Craig fouled out, or at least was in massive foul trouble, and they just tried to go another way. They tried their best to go another way. So curious to hear your take on Denver as a whole. They did pull out the win. So at the end of the day, Jamal Murray, did his Superman thing. But what are your thoughts on Denver?
Yeah, they're interesting. There's a lot of different ways this could kind of play out. Jeremy Grant got the minutes and was the better play off the bench over Paul Millsap. Both their prices are attractive. I think, not that you're going to have more than like 20% of either, but I think this could be a nice Millsap bounce back spot. Jokic's price has increased, and like, he's a great player, but his role has changed with Murray back, and like the assists have come way down. I don't think he's really going to ceiling out for 60 all that often. Even in that overtime game, he only really got to 53. There's just other guys to do damage now with Porter Jr. fully entrenched in that role, Murray back, Grant healthy, Millsap healthy. They're just a little too deep. And, I prefer to kind of take the mid-tier value guys and spend up for Jokic. I'll probably end up with like 10% or less of Jokic. Then Michael Porter, what do we do with him? The guy's got massive upside. We've seen him go for 50 plus a few times in the bubble. That was before Murray got back, so there's that. But, his price is right in a nice sweet spot at 7K, and then we saw him get taken off the court for defensive purposes. How do they adjust? I think he's still, an interesting play to get like 20% of because of that massive ceiling. You could have 40 in the first half before they even worry about the, defensive switch. And, they may just change their strategy where they do box and one or double team Mitchell, and like he's not as much of a liability and they keep him on the court. So he's a guy that I want to have some of. The guys I like the most, though, are Torrey Craig and Monty Morris. Again, we're like starved for value. Torrey Craig, I think, is going to get as many minutes he can handle until he gets into foul trouble. And, like, he's, outside of the foul trouble, he's been more aggressive offensively this year. And he's become like a kind of a well-rounded guy. He can get you defensive stats, get some rebounds, get some scoring. Like, at 3-1 for a guy that's going to probably play 30-plus minutes, I like that. And then Monty Morris is like, too cheap, entrenched in that backup point guard role outside of Murray. They don't really have any other ball handlers. Jokic becomes the next most likely ball handler. And he's just been really like safe and reliable in terms of like his production for them and DFS production. At 3-7, no one's going to go here. There's a chance that someone does foul out and he does close, but I just think he gets you to like 20 to 25 DraftKings points at very low ownership. And there's not a ton of value plays on this slate that I really like. So those two guys I've got the most interest in.
Yeah, it's funny. We're on the same page with Torrey Craig for sure. He's actually this year he's had some pretty good games for him at his price against Utah specifically in the 4 times that they've met. 3 times that they met. This most recent game, he only got 21 minutes. He still went for 17 DraftKings points in just 21 minutes. And the only reason he got 21 minutes is because he fouled out of the game. So I do think that's what they have usually do with a guy like Donovan Mitchell, right? They put Torrey Craig on him when they don't have Gary Harris, when they don't have those kind of guys. And so I expect them to try to do that again. Maybe he has more success against Mitchell this go around. And it's funny because if they have success with that, then that could also affect who they play at the 4. Now, you don't know if it's going to be Millsap, Grant, or Porter. I guess it's going to depend on who's already having a good game. But if Torrey Craig doesn't foul out, then maybe they don't have to worry about the switches so much and Michael Porter Jr. getting trashed by Donovan Mitchell. So just food for thought. Just how one little thing like that, one player can make a big difference for the rest of the rotation. But I do like Torrey Craig. There's nothing here about the optimal. He's another like fairly low usage player. It's nothing crazy. It's just he's extremely cheap, basically free. Like Paulie said, we're kind of starved for value, and a lot of the studs are priced up even higher. And it makes sense. Again, this is a team he's had success against. Why? Because they have a guy like Donovan Mitchell, and that's the kind of guy they usually put Torrey Craig on, where they don't have Gary Harris. So I do like the Craig call. Outside of that, I'm also reluctant to pull the trigger on too many guys. You mentioned Monte Morris. I don't mind. He's just cheap. It's just hard to see him really hurting you, assuming he gets his 28 or more minutes. I'm okay with going back to Murray. The price not elevated that much, but he was extremely efficient. The difference between him and Mitchell is his price still has some ceiling left in it. If Murray goes for 60 again and you get that at 7-2, you're going to be fucking fine with that. But the rest of it, I'll have a little Jokic, but his price is elevated. I'll have some Millsap. I like the Millsap call. I do think his price has gotten down to a point where it's kind of ridiculous. And he could end up being a guy they decide to keep on the court a little bit more. I know from a matchup perspective, you kind of struggled to see where he really fits in this, but the price is really low. We know what he's capable of. He doesn't need a lot of minutes to put up something really good. He shot terribly. I think he took 10 shots and was like 3 for 10. So if he made a couple more baskets, he gets you 6x at that price, and you're fine. So I do like the Millsap call. I'm so on everybody else. Michael Porter Jr. is a guy I had a lot of, and I didn't anticipate that happening. I won't have as much, but I still have some, just because we do know he's got a massive ceiling if it gets there. Next up, we've got the Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics. We've got a 215.5 total, up 1.5 points. Boston opened up -5, still at -5. We're going to talk about the Philly side first. Paul Lee, what do we got on these Sixers?
Yeah. This is my favorite game of the slate, and Embiid's my favorite play on the Sixers. One of my favorites, my favorite stud on the slate. The Boston side we'll get to in a minute, but they have a lot to like. This game, I think, has a lot to like with. I forget where I read it, but with Ben Simmons off the court, the 76ers go from like a low 100s defensive rating team to like a 114, second worst in the bubble. So this is not going to be the same kind of slow, kind of paced game. Both teams have lost 2 of their better defensive players. And, I think we're going to see a little bit different kind of feel. And I don't know if like the rest of the industry is going to be anticipating that. So, I like this game. I want to get exposure to it. After Embiid on Philly, it's Tobias Harris. He's priced pretty fair for the usage and, scoring he's going to be relied on in this game. I have a feeling that they may announce Alec Burks as a starter, over Shake Milton. They had a tough loss in game 1. They really just needed more scoring. Maybe they don't make the starting switch, but I think the minute switch certainly happens where Burks goes to closer to 30 and Shake Milton goes down to closer to 20. None of that's, fact. That's just my opinion, but I see that happening. I think they need that scoring out there. They're lacking a little bit. Matisse Thybulle got a ton of minutes, pretty much just kind of like, jumped into Ben Simmons' role defensively and, playing like the 4 on defense. He does have upside when, it all kind of comes together. He doesn't really score a ton, but he gets rebounds, he gets blocks, he gets steals. He's one of these freak athletes that, could do well in this kind of environment. Al Horford, revenge status, just an inch, fairly priced play that's going to get a usage increase. Should be motivated to want to beat his old team that he didn't really want to leave. And that's it. Those 5 guys, Embiid, Tobias, Burks, Horford, and Thybulle are the ones that I'll have the most of. I'll have a lot of Embiid, like 60%. I've got Tobias at capped at 40, Burks 35, Horford 30, and then Shake Milton, Josh Richardson. I'm willing to take like 10% of. Josh Richardson every now and then shoots really well and, could go for like 35, 7x, and, you'd want to have some of him. It doesn't happen that often, maybe once every 10 games or something like that, but they're going to look for somebody to step up, and he'd be the next candidate, in my opinion, after Burks. So, get a little, but Embiid and Tobias and Burks are the 3 I want the most of.
Quick update: we got the lineup for the Brooklyn Nets. Sorry, we got Karis LeVert, Temple, Harris, TLC, and Jared Allen. So, did Kurorik start last time? I feel like Kurorik started last time, so they made that switch because he was just getting sauced so bad. Yep. Yeah, as expected. Yep. As expected. As far as Philly goes, I'm with you on Embiid. I think that if I'm gonna pay these kind of prices, Jokic is like 9.7 now. If I'm gonna pay these kind of prices for a center, I want a guy like Embiid who I know is getting a boost, and the boost he's getting is from Ben Simmons being out, and like you said, from his team not playing defense and games just being higher scoring when Ben Simmons is out. So I do like Embiid as far as the studs go. I like Tobias Harris, just not as much. He's still kind of expensive on FanDuel. It's much easier to swallow at 7.2. Horford, I have a hard time reaching at 6.7, but I don't mind him so much at 5.5 on FanDuel. J. Rich was pretty impressive. The usage for J. Rich in that last game was pretty big. You have to be concerned with. He's one of the better defenders they have, so you got to be concerned. He's always going to be on a guy that's scoring, whether it's Jaylen Brown at the 2 or Kemba Walker at the 1. He's going to be on the guy that they need to try to limit. So I like the usage. I was impressed with what I saw, but in the back of your mind, I'm afraid to go too heavy because I know foul trouble is a thing. You know, if they were to start Alec Burks over Milton, I would load up on Burks. I'm still going to have some Burks, but I would really load up on Burks if they were going to make that move, just because Burks is so much more of a high, fantasy point per minute player than a guy like fucking Milton. And we are hurting for value. I mean, Burks is 4-1 on FanDuel. He's still a phenomenal play on FanDuel. I'm okay with Tybull. I'm okay with some of the other guys, but like you said, Embiid is the main one. I'm okay working in some Simmons. Burks is the guy I have my eye on. I'll definitely raise my exposure, and Josh Richardson I think is fine from the usage that we saw. I saw a couple people in the chat asking about Pauly D's article. It is up. I posted a link in the chat to it, the Core Plays article for those subscribed to WiseTake.com. It is up, so I posted a link in the YouTube chat. If you're having a hard time finding it for whatever reason, just go there. Worst case scenario, if you can't find it, just go to the NBA section and scroll down a little bit, and you should be able to see it. With that said, let's go to the Boston side of the ball. Gordon Hayward played 34 minutes before getting hurt. He is out for today's game. What are you doing with Boston?
Yeah, so a lot to like here on Boston. Basically, down to, what do I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that, all the usage is going to get condensed down to. I do think this is the Kemba breakout spot. I wouldn't get too, heavily invested in him, like not over 50%. But again, it's my favorite game. Really like game stacking. You can easily get 5, 6 guys from these two teams into one lineup. And, pray for overtime and take down donkeys, do the dirty dance. But I think this is a Kemba blow up spot. They're going to need him. Hayward was getting decent usage, contributing across multiple stats. And like I said, both these teams lost key defenders. I think the game's going to play much faster. That, fits Kemba's style better. Jason Tatum's an absolute stud, but similar to Donovan Mitchell, there's not a ton of ceiling. Unlike Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum has gone for, 50 to 60, multiple times, like 40% of the time his last 25 games or so. So, 55 is 6x at 9K. You want that. So I prefer Tatum over Mitchell in that price range, just thinking that he's going to more consistently go for those 55, 60 point games and, getting similar usage right now with, a major offensive guy missing. Jaylen Brown also playing with a little injury. I wouldn't really worry about it. He's going to start. He's going to play as many minutes as he can handle. He's been awesome, but 7,500, it's hard to, and, he hasn't gone for 50 plus very often. He's had some great games. I want to add some Marcus Smart into the mix at 5'6". He's a low usage guy that can get you literally a 5 DraftKings point performance or a 41 when everything kind of comes together. And then Daniel Tice, I really like. One of my favorite value plays on the slate at 4.7. Biggest concern will be getting into foul trouble on Embiid. And then Robert Williams is really growing on me. He's min price. He's one of these freak athlete, 6'11" kind of not stretch forward, but power forwards or centers that has, long ass arms, can leap through the roof. And I envision him getting a bunch of minutes. I think he's already kind of past God mode for minutes as the backup center. And I could see them playing him on the court with Tice, when Embiid and Horford are out there and just matching those guys' size this way. All those minutes kind of freeing up. There's no one else I think that really sees a ton, like maybe Ojale, but Williams won't need a ton of minutes to do well. in 14 minutes, he went for 25 against Memphis 2 games ago. Like if he can get like 18 to 20 minutes because Hayward's out, we could see like a 10, 12x kind of performance in like a mediocre game. So he's a guy I've got some interest in. Obviously, it's risky. We don't know that he's going to see any increase in minutes, but he's like the logical choice in my opinion. They match up well with Philly's size. And similar to why I liked Hassan Whiteside yesterday, Robert Williams, makes it almost feels like that same kind of thing. Just a guy that we haven't seen do it before, really. But he certainly can, and that could be a really sneaky player that does it dirty for the nation.
Dirty Styles. With Hayward out, Tatum obviously already played well. Similarly to Donovan Mitchell, you're just concerned about where the ceiling is here. It seems like you may need a little bit of help, whether it be overtime. Even with the boost, 9K is a lot of money for any player, especially when you're talking about a playoff slate where all 4 games you're looking at maximum minutes for everyone. Jaylen Brown still feels within reach, especially on FanDuel. I expect him to play a lot. I know he's been hurt, but I expect him to bounce around between the 2 and the 3 to cover Gordon Hayward. I'm with you on Kemba Walker. They're gonna have to ask him to step it up a little bit. He was hurt. He was limited. It just hasn't really been aggressive. But that's gonna have to change at some point. And this might be the spot with no Gordon Hayward, because they will stagger guys up, and whoever was on his team may not be there now, depending on what the unit will be. Marcus Smart should be asked to play a lot of minutes. With no Hayward, he makes the most sense to kind of step in and I think pick up a boost in terms of minutes go. I'm with you on Tice as well. They're going to need him on the court for Embiid. That's the bottom line. They clearly prefer him to Enes Kanter and these other big men. So I would assume if you lose a guy like Gordon Hayward, he's going to pick up at least a couple extra minutes. So I think him and Smart are the main benefactors. Boston's always one of those teams where it's like they're in those games where a bunch of guys typically do well. The pricing, again, on FanDuel is a lot easier to play multiple of these guys. On DraftKings, it's kind of tough to expect all these guys to go for like 50 to give you what you're looking for. But I will work them in. Kemba and Brown are my 2 favorites. After that, probably Marcus and Tice. Tatum's on an island of his own. It's not that I don't like him. I will have some just because he's got the ceiling on this team. It's just, again, similar to Donovan Mitchell. It's hard to take a huge stand on a guy that's priced at $9,000 on DraftKings and 8.7 on FanDuel. But I will get some because the usage is going to be, massive. Last game here, we've got the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers. We got a 230 total down from 231. The Clippers opened up -6. They're still at -6. We're going to start with the Dallas side. Porzingis got ejected in the last game. He's currently questionable, though it seems precautionary. I think everybody's expecting him to play. What do you got on Dallas?
Yeah. I am not really into Luka. I think he's too expensive. I think you got to sacrifice too much to get him. And, I think Porzingis doesn't get tossed from this game and kind of takes away some of that usage. I think they've got some solid defenders on the Clippers to kind of focus on Luka if he does start to beat them up. Just not enough profit in his price, in my opinion. A team that could get blown out. So I'm not really into this game very much. I do think the Clippers kind of win it running away. That doesn't mean I won't have some stacks of it. It's just 4 games. You might as well get them all. But this is my least favorite game of the day. I do like Seth Curry quite a bit, really cheap. I do like Dorian Finney-Smith and Tim Hardaway Jr. Those 3 guys seem underpriced for big roles in the highest total game on the slate. Porzingis I'll get some of. I do think this game is close. It's on the strength of Porzingis having a really big game, coming back motivated. And that's really it. I'm not into Luka. I'll have a little bit of Porzingis, and I do like those 3 kind of cheaper guys that are going to get a ton of minutes. Curry, THJ, and Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah, I like the game a little bit more. I think it's more so that I don't love the other games, so kind of by default, I'm kind of left with this game. I'm with you on Luka, though. He didn't even have that great of a ceiling in a game that was close without Porzingis for most of it. So I am a little concerned. We mentioned the history last time. The Clippers play defense. They got some guys like Pat Bev who got into foul trouble in Game 1. They've got Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. These are all guys who play defense. So it can be a little difficult for wings at times. I do like Porzingis. I think he was a big variable, a piece they were missing. They don't. Maxi Kleber ain't doing shit. He's got I think he had like a 0% usage rate or something crazy in game one, even with all the minutes. So with Porzingis there, I do think it's a difference maker for this team. Hopefully he doesn't get kicked out. On FanDuel though, is where the real value of Porzingis is. The power forward position is not great. He's 8,600 over there, which is feels steep, but when you look at the position, I don't think you're probably willing to do it. So. FanDuel, I'll have a ton of them. I still have a good amount of them on DraftKings because I don't like Luka as much. That I'm gonna hope that Porzingis is the one that just goes for 60 or whatever and does dirties. It's harder to pick the Dallas guys. I'm good with Seth Curry. He's obviously very cheap on DraftKings. I expect him to be popular. I think someone like Dorian Finney-Smith could surprise us and have a decent little game, but I don't like him any more than I like an OG and Anunoby or some of the other value plays we talked about. So I guess it's really Porzingis. And then the Clippers side of the ball is the side that I'm more interested in, being that Dallas is the team that doesn't play defense very well. With that said, Paulie, take us over to the Clippers.
Yeah, Kawhi feels expensive, but then you look at his performance, and he went 1 of 7 from 3 and still went for 60. I think he's a stud you want to mix in. Will probably be very low owned as it's the last game, and it's hard to kind of afford him with all the other studs surrounding him that are probably going to be more popular. Paul George is all right, but I think he's a little too expensive. Only in game stacks will I really be looking for him. The guys that I've got the interest in is Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell. I like to jump on guys before the rest of the industry. Montrezl Harrell played 15, 16 minutes in his first game back. This is the playoffs. They need to get him in shape, whether the game's close or not. I think he gets closer to around 25 minutes playing with his buddy Lou Williams, who, was struggling too most of this year without him. I think they get into a rhythm, second unit, and kind of go back to last year's ways at low ownership, low price, major upside, do thy dirt. And I don't mind mixing in some Ivica Zubac and Marcus Morris, but Lou and Montrez are the guys I'm going to have the most of at around 25 to 30% apiece.
Yeah, I think when I look at the pricing of the Clippers, I think it wouldn't surprise me if they're the team, if they're the 4 or 5 pieces. I mean, it may only be one of Kawhi and PG, but maybe paired with Montrez or Zubac or Patrick Beverley or Lou Williams or Marcus Morris. I could see this kind of being it. Dallas hasn't played defense. This game has the highest total on the board. It should be played at a decent pace. And like you said, we are seeing playoff Kawhi. It's not the same Kawhi that we get during the regular season, conservative. We're going to rest the next day Kawhi. This is playoff Kawhi. He's going to play a ton. He's going to be aggressive, going to grab boards. He's the board man. He's told you that several times. It's not that confusing. He's a board man and a fun guy. He's told us this, very direct. I'm cool with Paul George, but I don't like the idea of having two. I don't want them together on too many teams because you kind of want one to ceiling out. They are both kind of expensive now. But I love the Lou Williams call. His price has come down. And I know Patrick Beverley got into foul trouble, but it's pretty simple with me. One of Pat Bev or Lou Will is going to have a good game against Dallas. Either Pat Bev, because he stays out of foul trouble, he shuts down Luka, and he's just too cheap and falls into value, or Pat Bev fouls out anyway, so Lou Will goes out there, plays 35 minutes, and just takes a ton of shots and just torches him. So either way, I like that situation. And Zubac and Harrell, I'm going to have about the same at each because this is a spot where centers have just mashed. And so I want one of these guys, right? Zubac did pretty damn well for us in the last game. And if he doesn't, it's probably because Harrell got more minutes than he got last time, and he was able to do the dirt. So either way, I want exposure to those centers. But yeah, this is the Clippers specifically are my favorite team. And I think there's a lot of value options. Like Patrick Beverley had 5 fouls in that game against Dallas, went for 20 DraftKings points in 20 minutes. Say he doesn't get into foul trouble this go around, which is tough to do against a guy like Luka, and he is there for defense, so you got to expect him to be aggressive. But either way, between him and Lou Williams, between Kawhi and Paul George, between the centers, and then even Marcus Morris, who has been a little bit more aggressive, at least so far in the bubble, you got to think that this, if there was a team I was going to stack and expect them all to return me 6x or better, I would think it's this team. Holla for a dollar. I'm going to get into the questions as I try to finalize some of these teams. Now that we've gone through the slate and discussed how we plan on dominating, let's do this little pop-out chat feature here. We got about, 13 minutes to the first game tips?
12.
12? Oh, shit. Who are your favorite value plays with the highest upside for FanDuel?
Oh, Kai. Let's pull up FanDuel pricing so I don't sound like a dick. And I like Dorian Finney-Smith. I like Jordan Clarkson. TLC is 4,400 on FanDuel. I like that. I like OG and Newbie. Alec Burks at 41. And Royce O'Neal.
Royce to 5'9". Charles Pitt asked, do you think TLC is blowout proof for Brooklyn?
Yeah, I do.
I agree. I mean, they were playing him when they were resting all the starters, so I would agree with that. Charles, Solo D's, Morris. I don't know if he means Monty Morris or Marcus Morris, but talk about both.
What? Just do we like them?
Yeah. I think he's asking about one of them. I just don't know which one.
I like Monty Morris. I think he's like a sneaky value play that, should get you like around 25 DraftKings points. Just very, very firm, very reliable. Marcus Morris, I'm not a big fan of. I prefer Montrez and Lou Williams from the Clippers today, so he would kind of take away from those dogs.
Montrezl Maximus. Let me just do some fun guy activities. Okay. I don't see any other questions, so I guess we're going to get up out of here. One of the twins. Okay, so you did address that. So, all right, that's going to do it, Nation. All the content is up at WiseTake.com. We got about 11 minutes to lock. Good luck today. We'll catch you back for baseball. Here's the last question from Moochie Mobties. Best play of the day on both sites. So, regardless of site, who's the play?
I'm going to say Joel Embiid.
Joel Embiid. Dom K says, do you like all in with Alec Burks? If he's starting, I probably would get close to that. But if he's not starting, I can't go all in on anyone really.
Yeah.
Holla for $1. All right, Nation, we're getting out of here. For myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, hit the like button, and as always, good luck.
Yeah.